It should be a celebration when you manage to find the fairway in golf.
Great drive, Marcus.
Thanks, Craig. But a dark secret for some of us golfers is that we actually struggle when we find the fairway.
Bad shot, Marcus.
Thanks, Craig. Some of us actually prefer to be in the semi-rough with the ball popped up on a nice fluffy lie. It's almost like having it teed up.
Great shot, Marcus.
Thanks, Craig. So if you're one of those golfers who prefers that fluffy, nice lie in the semi-rough, then this could be the video for you. Because if you asked a tour player or a low handicapper, they'd always go for that tight fairway lie so they can get that pure strike and that spin control. So maybe you're struggling with your weight transfer and that correct release. Take a look at this swing. Here, I'm making virtually no weight shift. I'm early releasing the golf club, approaching the golf ball on a very low, shallow, wide angle. The complete opposite for what we need in order to compress that golf ball with a leading edge, cutting into the turf and making that nice, clean divot. Now this might be a chicken and egg situation because recently I had Ian in for a lesson and Ian naturally started to shift his low point forward, get that leading edge digging in and compressing that golf ball with a divot after the strike. And that was achieved by just giving him the trickiest, most horrible lies we could find, and he naturally managed to adapt his release to get that strike correct for that particular lie. And then he started ripping it.
Well played.
Now I know what you're thinking. I want to rip it too. So what we're going to do, we're going to walk over to the thick rough and we're going to use this lie to create the exact same swing that we need to flush it off those very tight fairway lies. It's the same dynamics. So if we drop a ball in here, a really nice attractive lie, as you can see, if you were presented with this, say you'd got a wedge in your hand and you had like 80 yards, 100 yards to go, how are you going to propel this that distance without catching all this grass before the ball? Now, if you're an early releaser of the golf club, typically with little to no weight shift, then what you're going to probably find is that this presents a problem because all this grass is in the way of your club head and the ball, purely because you're releasing the golf club so early that the arc of the swing widens and then shallows out way too early, creating this issue where we catch all that grass before the ball and typically struggle getting a good strike, potentially even topping the ball from a lie like this. And in relation to the lie on the fairway, this will typically result in a thin shot or a fat shot hitting the ground before the ball because the arc is so shallow and the low point has moved back behind the ball. So if we were to step back away from the ball and use this lie, how would we swing to avoid catching all this grass? What I'd want you to do is make a normal backswing and now avoid hitting all this grass by swinging down. And how do we swing down? Well, what you'll notice is that I'm shifting. And what that's done is that's shifted the whole swing. That's shifted the low point. And now I can release later on a much steeper angle, avoiding all this grass. And now I've got a really big divot. That's not absolutely necessary, but what it is demonstrating is that we've got a downward angle of attack. The leading edge is cutting in through the grass, through the turf, and that sound we can hear, that thud, that's the bounce working. So the dynamics that we're creating here are compressing that golf ball because we've de-lofted the face. We've presented the sweet spot on a downward angle to the ball. Conversely, with the early release, we're doing the opposite. If you find yourself scything through the grass here, then that's your early release. This is the feedback that you need to make that adjustment. So how can we speed this process up? Because we don't want to be in the rough all day trying to find that perfect release. We want to use a few exercises to help speed this process up. So what I want you to do is feel the flail. And in order to do that, we're just going to hold the club and we're going to move the club by using the handle first. Notice how far the handle's travelling in relation to the club head. Much further. How far the handle shifted in relation to where the club head is. Notice as the handle goes one way, the club head goes the other. So the club head's always trailing behind the handle. This is the flail to trail drill. Now if you start to do this a little bit quicker, you'll notice it activates the lower body. You'll notice the legs start to move. If I speed it up, but not increasing the actual swing, just increasing the tempo of it. So I'm keeping the actual flail very short, but what I'm doing is I'm speeding it up. And that really now engages the rest of the body, in particularly the lower body. And what I'd like you to do then is start to stomp, start to paddle the feet. And you'll really feel now this quite aggressive weight transfer. That's pressure shifting from foot to foot with a very, very stable centre of mass. This is not unstable, this is not swaying. This is a very efficient pressure shift which is enabling you to use the ground to speed this up and ultimately accelerate the golf club using the handle. And what does that result in? It results in a steep angle of attack because the club head is lagging. It's not being released. So the angle of attack is steeper. The club releases and shallows out much later through impact and after we've struck the ball. That's exactly where we want this golf swing to shallow out. We don't want it to be shallowing out too early. So essentially, this exercise is creating the all-important lag, because if we want the club to lag, it's got to trail. So we've got to move the handle. And what I see a lot of people doing when they come for lessons is they're swinging the club head at the ball. They're not actually using the whole golf club. They're not actually flailing the club, they're actually throwing it. So we want to use the flail. We want to get that steeper angle of attack. And when we go back in the rough now, what we'll notice is this makes it so much easier to actually strike the ground later. In fact, I could go over there if I wanted, even more to the left. All this grass is not in danger of being struck. So what that's going to do, that's going to enable me to get this ball out of the rough. Struggling to find it, it's that bad. So here, taking the stance, paddling the feet, and waggling the club in a way that I intend to swing. Not this. That's the early release, that's just encouraging an early release. We need the flail, we need the handle leading. So now, moving to the ball, taking this waggle and integrating that feeling into a swing. I suggest you actually flail the club back as a practice and then strike the grass after the ball, just as a little practice swing. Doesn't mean you have to flail it on the way back, it just means we're sensing the lag in the system. And when we're paddling the feet, we're engaging that lower body, and now we've got a full body sequence from the ground with that weight shift to deliver that club on that downward angle. And you can see the divot after the ball. And all this grass is still intact. So what we're doing before the actual golf shot is just familiarising ourselves with these kind of movement patterns that are going to be really useful for getting that strike, for lagging the golf club. So be mindful of how you waggle the club. We're waggling it by moving the handle. Look how the club head's moving. It's not even moving that far. If I want to move it further, I can start to flail it more. What I'm actually doing here is I'm rotating the club about its centre of mass here. I'm not actually rotating it from here. That's what most people are doing. They're swinging the club and pivoting it from here. Just use something like a tree, place the club across the tree, and now waggle the club back and forth, keeping contact with the tree. So now you're using the handle. Now you're rotating the club from a different place. But this is what we want to experience when we're lagging the club. And if we step away, we can start to really introduce the rotation as well. Look at the hips rotating back and through, and how that plays a big role in helping to fire this sequence. And then moving back, we can explore that, striking the grass. We've got the weight shift, we've got the paddle, we've got the rotation, and we've got the handle moving. Now we can use it as a flail in the swing. And that's perfect when we go to these tight lies to really get some speed and compress that ball. Shall I just go to a tight lie?
That was a good drive, that, Marcus. Don't fat it like last time.
I'll try not to, mate.
Good shot, that, Marcus.
Thanks, Craig.